To excellent. So it's a pleasure to be here. Just get a little snapshot on the Canadian co-op ecosystem. We're talking about 20, 25 minutes. Those on the call who know me know that I could talk about this for hours on end. So Vera will give me the evil eye should I start going long. However, we do want to have a lot of conversation at the end. So hopefully, I'm going to put a few tidbits of information out there that gets people thinking. That was a beautiful land acknowledgement, Vera. I'm actually based in I'm calling from Ottawa, but I'm based in Gatineau, which is across the river, which is the unceded and unsurrendered land of the Algonquin Anishinaabe. And CMC is based here as although we are a virtual office, our home base is here. And just in regards to the recording as well, I will make my slides available to Vera should anybody want a PDF version of it. There's no confidential information. You can use those stats. Just keeping in mind that we will be coming out with a new economic impact study shortly. Therefore, the numbers will change. So it's good, at least for a little bit. So I guess we'll just get started and have as much time as possible to talk. Can everybody see a big black screen with the CMC logo? Yes, excellent. All right. All right. All right, should be able to move it. Okay, sorry. Okay, oh, here we go. Nope. All right, this is slightly embarrassing. Let me just try something else.
We're all having a little bit of tech issues. I think Zoom changed things up on us. So,
Yeah, let's go with that.
so we're
All
seeing
right.
we're seeing your whole screen now. Oh, now it's back to the slide.
All
Perfect.
right, sounds good. Okay. All right. Well, the first few slides are just basically for future reference purposes. So that's my contact information. Feel free to send me a email or phone message or text if you ever have any questions or follow-ups. Happy to answer them. Basically, I have the privilege of working at the national apex body, and I see some great things happening in the co-op world from coast to coast to coast. So if I can help in any way, either connect some dots or leverage some initiatives that are going for the greater good of the co-op sector in Manitoba, I would be happy to do so. For those of you who are not familiar with Cooperatives and Mutuals Canada, we are the national apex body, and our membership is basically made up of some of the largest financial and non-financial cooperatives in Canada, the provincial associations such as the Manitoba Co-op Association, the sectoral federations such as the Canadian Worker Co-op Federation, and a number of co-ops that are either incorporated federally or want to be part of the national level conversation. And our job is to basically, the rising tide that floats all boats. So we're trying to create a more enabling environment for cooperatives. And basically, we're doing that through raising awareness for the model, doing federal level advocacy, and helping connect some stakeholders that are working on similar activities and aligning that so we can have a much stronger co-op economy in Canada. Now, co-ops are very diversified. These are just a few examples of co-ops. Unfortunately, I have not been able to visit all of them just yet. But when people think about cooperatives, they really think about usually health, housing, and health food, as I like to say it. So, hay in terms of agriculture, housing because it's such a prominent part of the sector, and health food being that sort of fair trade organic food cupboard. Which, in all fairness, there are many of those. However, the co-op model, as we discussed, can be quite flexible and adapt to the various needs. So, you see the Battle River Railway on top there. We actually have two co-op trains in Canada, one in southern Saskatchewan and one in near Forestburg, Alberta. And those were set up when CN decided that the shortline railways were not profitable enough. The local farmers said, hey, we still need to get our products to market. Train's the most efficient way to do it. So they actually set up cooperatives converted what was the old CN short-line railways into cooperative rail lines. Obviously, you're being out west, you'll be familiar with the top right image there, which is the red shield of the cooperative retailing system. 1,600 points of sale across Western Canada, quite impressive. But then, the outside of retail and gas and so on, you'll find co-ops everywhere from the fisheries to the community theaters. Lots of paramedics in Quebec are structured as very large worker co-ops as a way to have better hours and control over the quality of work. And Ski Timber Ridge is actually a ski hill in Saskatchewan. Yes, Saskatchewan has a ski hill, but it's actually skiing down towards the river. So again, people want access to products or services. They turn to the co-op model as a way to access it, be it for a need for economic purposes, or they just want to have access to a community center or activities that they would not be able to have otherwise. So I could spend hours talking about various examples. Unfortunately, we don't have it. So I'm going to provide a little snapshot overall. So if you're looking at the 6,500 co-ops, mutuals, credit unions, and CAISs across Canada, 70% of them fall within the consumer cooperatives, and we're including the financial services as part of that as well. And that's usually where the consumers are the ones that are actually member owners of the co-op. So retail, housing, things of that nature. Producer cooperatives, people always think of agriculture, but being in Manitoba, and some of you are quite familiar with Arctic cooperatives. Well, the Inuit art that gets produced in Canada falls under the producer aspect, like many other arts and culture activities. 6% of co-ops in Canada are worker co-ops. You'll find them often in restaurants and so on, but the largest ones are in forestry and fisheries. There's processing plants for lumber in Quebec that are completely owned and driven by various worker co-ops. Fisheries, paramedics, as I mentioned earlier. Multi-stakeholder co-ops represent about 8%, but they're the ones that often are quite of interest to people that are not as familiar with cooperatives, because it's taking different types of members that all have a common need, and that might be, as the example is their healthcare. So the idea of having a community health clinic in a small community is all about proximity services. So it'll still cost the province the same amount to provide those medical services and reimburse the doctors, nursing staff, and so on. However, it can also make the difference between somebody having to drive 2 hours to go to the next larger town over, or having a local clinic. So the multi-stakeholder cooperatives are a great example of various types of members coming together. Federations are pretty self-explanatory, groups coming together. And then there are some unique characteristics that are not found across Canada. So they're not part of the big four: consumer, producer, worker, or multi-stakeholder. Community service co-ops, which are available in Manitoba, are co-ops that are established for the community good. That's pretty self-explanatory by the name. Often around social services or that type of activity. In many other places, they're just simply multi-stakeholder co-ops, but some provincial legislations do allow a specific category called community service. Worker shareholder is only available in Quebec, and that basically allows the employees to create an investment fund that invests in their workplace, giving them a seat at the table in terms of the decision-making process. And new generation cooperatives are only available in Western Canada. There's only about 16 last time I checked. The Battle River Railway is one of them. It was a new model that was established a number of years ago to help facilitate investments from external parties, sort of a bit more flexibility around the investment rules to help with financing and capital generation. Now, if you look at Canada as a whole, 45% of the co-ops are in Quebec. So of the 6,500 cooperative enterprises, 45% are in Quebec because of the enabling environment that's there. So it's not a magical number that appeared overnight. It is a strategic thrust that the province set many years ago to have a much fairer and equitable economy. And they found that cooperatives and social economy enterprises were great ways to do that. So I don't know if people realize it, how it went, but when you travel across the world or even across Canada, people think about Mondragon in the Basque regions of Spain, and they think of Emilia-Romagna in Italy. However, people really look to Canada and specifically Quebec as some of the best practices. So it's something that we should be proud of, and there can be a lot of exchanges and lessons learned. If you look at the, by the numbers, which interests economists and so on, we're talking about contributions of close to $53 billion towards the GDP in 2021. As I mentioned, we're just completing the next version of the economic impact study, so that number will change slightly. However, it is something that's, it's not negligible. People think that co-ops are small little entities. They don't realize that as a whole, it has quite a powerful voice. When you're thinking about co-ops, most people will again think about retail. So those retail locations, be it the gas bar, grocery stores, and so on. The cases and credit unions, insurance providers are huge. And then the construction and manufacturing are the largest segments within the sector. And because those are the larger entities, that's also where the overall revenues, the employees, the higher salaries tend to be. And when you look at the numbers again, close to 200,000 or 195,000 people are directly employed in the cooperative sector. And that basically is just, those full-time equivalent or full-time equivalent positions that themselves people are employed and, get a paycheck from the cooperative or CAIS mutual or credit union. However, that does not count the ripple effect of those jobs having in the input-output economic studies that look at the overall impact of those jobs on wealth creation for the communities. Now, there are some very large cooperatives out west. However, when you look at all of the 6,500 cooperatives, there is only 26 at last count that are actually considered large enterprises, so that they actually have more than 500 employees. And many of them are linked to the cooperative retailing system or Solio or things of that nature, the big processing plants for food or retail networks. Now, there's about 150 that are medium enterprises, so you're talking about 100 to 499, but the vast majority either have no employees at all or have less than 99 employees. So that is one of the reasons it makes sense for cooperatives, non-financial cooperatives, to actually fall under innovation, science, economic development, the small business, and tourism marketplace services branch. So our home in government is actually reflective of where this fits in terms of the vast majority of the entities in the sector. Now, this is something I like to point out because there's a lot of misconceptions about cooperatives, for-profit, not-for-profit. What is profit in the co-op world? We don't have the time to go down the philosophical underpinnings of, people before profit and the underpinnings of that conversation in the co-op world. However, according to Statistics Canada, if you can or do give patronage dividends back to your members, you are considered a for-profit. So yes, it goes completely against a lot of the conversations about sharing and bring the cost down to what, closer to what the co-op paid and so on. But that's really the rule that CRA and the government of Canada uses. If you give money back to your members, you're considered a for-profit. It's a long, arduous war of attrition and battle. It will not change overnight, but that is something where there's a lot of education that needs to be done. Now, here's an interesting point. So it should come to not a surprise to most people that the co-ops are omnipresent in rural Canada, be it by their headquarters or by their facilities. But a third of them are actually headquartered in rural communities. So that actually helps with an understanding of where the resources and the momentum comes from. Now, I asked the question to the Government of Canada, specifically the geomatics folks, how they define rural. And they actually started laughing a bit, and they said there was over 200 definitions of rural in the various Government of Canada programs. So after bumping around back and forth, we came to the conclusion that a simple way to look at it is that if the first number in your forward sorting area of your postal code is a 0, Canada Post considers you rural. So that is the extent of the scientific analysis of rural co-ops. But for example, if anybody's familiar with Leaf Rapids Consumer Co-op, one would be hard pressed to argue that they are not in a rural community or a remote community. Here's the statistics that comes from the 2023 SME profile cooperatives in Canada, which actually compares co-ops to traditional small and medium enterprises. This would be for-profit, non-financial cooperatives only, so it's not looking at housing or things like that. But the magic number that you see on the right goes a long way when we're talking to stakeholders, government entities, and so on, because you're talking about, close to 70% or more than 70% of co-ops being more than 20 years old. That speaks to the resilience, and that is a great door opener into conversation of why does that resilience exist. And it's because the people that are impacted by the co-op are the one calling the shots. It's not somebody in an ivory tower in Toronto or in your case, Winnipeg. So we actually have Cooperative Mutuals Canada has the only map of all co-ops and mutuals and credit unions and cases across the country. It's accessible. It's publicly accessible information that we want to promote and for people to use. So whether it's for academics, whether it's for your own curiosity, whether it's for co-op procurement, I invite you to go on there. I do give you fair warning. It is a fun rabbit hole to go down because you're discovering the breadth and depth of the co-op sector. But you can actually search by many different scenarios. So traditional stuff like name, sector would be the NAIC code, so the which industrial sector they're in, Winnipeg, province or territory, various things that help you find what you're looking for. However, there are two tabs that you can look at as well. So if you click on the advanced search filters on the left-hand side, that will actually allow you to search by co-ops that self-identify as Indigenous or that have the 251 co-ops that have charitable status or the various ethnocultural communities, co-op conversions, renewable energy co-ops. So usually anytime there's been academic research looking at a subsegment of the co-op world, we have tried to capture that for it to be reflected and available so that research not only lives sort of in the digital space and on a shelf, but it actually can be used and cross-referenced on the map. The other tab, which I want to draw attention to, is products and services. When you click on there, you'll actually be able to search for co-ops involved with digital design or game design or agriculture or forestry. And then you can actually go down an extra level and say, well, I want the co-op restaurants that are cafeterias, or I want the microbreweries. You can spend a lot of time looking and finding interesting programs and projects through that. But most importantly, you can find like-minded individuals that might be involved in a co-op initiative very much like yourself. Now, according to our database, there are 273 active co-ops in Manitoba. That'd be co-op enterprises that are for-profit or not-for-profit, CAISes, credit unions, or mutuals. It's very possible that not all of them are there. It's a living document, so as soon as we're notified that something is created and is active, we'll put it on the map. Sometimes it takes a little bit for us to be notified that a co-op has ceased to exist or has demutualized or dissolved. So this is a rough number, but we're pretty confident in terms of where it's at because we just actually had a survey across Canada with a 74% response rate of co-ops validating their information. So what I would suggest here is go on the map, look at your own co-ops you're involved with, and see if they appear when they should, be it through the advanced search filters or just on the map itself. So I just mentioned the first point in terms of validating your own information in your map. The role of the Manitoba Co-op Association cannot be understated in terms of being your voice. So if there are any issues, needs, things that you need as a co-op, and more than financing and awareness, which is the ongoing challenges, but just make sure Vera knows. Vera or some of the board members, because they're the ones that will bring that up as part of larger conversations, but should also be the first point of contact when provincial elected officials or policymakers are looking for guidance or information. If you have any issues in regards to accessing programs, do let the Manitoba Co-op Association know, or if you're part of the Canadian Worker Co-op Federation, make sure they are aware. If it's something having to do with a federal program, that's where we come in, and we're there to actually help break down some of those barriers. The spacing is in the wrong location here, but for example, when the COVID relief programs first came out many moons ago now, but co-ops were not eligible just because of the wording that was used. Because of our long-standing relationship with the government, we were actually able to correct that quite quickly. They didn't redo all the websites; they just added brackets, including co-ops, which opened some doors. But the other ones, Can Exports Me, Green and Inclusive Community Buildings, those are all programs that we've been able to open recently. The fourth one is around storytelling. So if you happen to have a great story, share it around, not just on your social media, but nudge the MCA to promote it, or send it to Cooperatives Mutuals Canada. We have a curated news service. We'll be happy to showcase your news. But it's also something, if you know that your local member of parliament actually was grew up in co-op housing, or is an avid participant in has a farm and is a member of the local co-op. Those are all things that are good to flag to both Vera and CMC, as we're constantly having meetings with elected officials. And lastly, just continue to demonstrate your leadership and desire to learn. So thank you for being here today. Thank you for being involved in the co-op sector. But this falls under the idea of continuing education and Principle 5, where we want to make sure that as many people as possible are familiar with the co-op sector. I'll leave you with the final little things. So from an advocacy point of view, everybody has a role to play. We can take care of the formal meetings with government officials and so on. But if you're bumping into them at a local barbecue, or if you're talking to them, just plug in the word co-op can raise a few eyebrows and some curiosity. Right now, these are some of the federal level priorities we're asking for the Canadian government. Creating a cooperative investment fund directly from government money to act as matching for the money that's out there. The small business deduction access is an ongoing file where when then Minister Morneau had actually made changes so people could not claim the small business deduction many times if it was a related business. The exception was granted for agriculture and fisheries co-ops, but it was not granted for the model as a whole, which means that worker members in forestry co-ops, for example, it's actually a disincentive for them to be a member of a co-op because their small business their private business cannot claim the $500,000 small business deduction. Cooperative housing, including co-ops, co-op procurement is part of national strategies. Co-op data continues to be a challenge. Technically, we get information from StatsCan, which works with CRA, but it's all itemized. They can't release specific information, and it's very problematic accessing information. And CRA does not collect information on type of co-ops, number of members, and so on, things that are obviously very important for us. But I will mention, though, that since we made the pre-budget submission and in collaboration with social capital partners, the capital gains tax $10 million relief for business owners has been applied to worker co-ops and has been made permanent. So that's been a long-standing advocacy priority we've had. In the co-op world, it was led by the Canadian Worker Co-op Federation and supported by CMC. and that was just recently announced. So it used to be bullet 6, but I changed to bullet because that was a recent GR victory. Last thing, I'm going to leave with a few things. I'm not going to go through them, but those are suggested readings that we'll be able to go into greater depth than the 20-25 minutes that I have now. I would draw your attention to the public opinion research that was just done in 2025 with Abacus Data. They are, they looked at the Canadian values and where co-ops fit and all that. They had a similar study back in 2020. But there's a lot of resources out there, and be it academic or more, just books by interested parties, there's a lot of information out there. So with that, I think I'm right on time, maybe a couple minutes over, and I will stop there, turn over for questions.
Thank you so much, Dan. I'm going to just pause the recording here.